Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining our diagnostic training session today. Now, what you're about to see is a pre-recorded training session we did over in the United States. But be assured that a lot of the material that we cover is really applicable to any automotive application. So just be aware that yes, it is a lot of North American vehicles, but a lot of the same principles apply over in the UK as well. Now, if you have any questions, if you're watching this during the premiere, you can just leave it in the chat. We'll be monitoring that. And if you're watching this after the premiere, then just feel free to leave a comment underneath the video, and we'll get to those as we can as well. So my name is Jason Gabrenas. I'm one of Snap-on Diagnostics technical trainers. I've been in the training department since 2013, traveling around North America, helping techs and shop owners get the most out of their diagnostic equipment. Before I did that, it was a couple years as a diagnostic sales rep at Snap-on, so I had a group of about 30 different franchisees I worked with, as well as the shops that they service, in order to help everyone get the most out of their diagnostic needs. Then before I did that, it was 8 years at Subaru, so I worked in a dealership, and over time, I guess, I just became that default diag guy in the shop. So I always ended up having the drivability problems, the intermittent problems, the weird wiring problems that would show up on those cars. And that's really where I cut my diagnostic teeth, was trying to figure out all those weird head scratcher type cars that had come into my bay. Then before that, a bunch of other miscellaneous wrenching jobs. Been a little over 25 years under hood experience for me. So our topic at hand today is going to be benefits of a repeatable diagnostic workflow. Now, this is by no means a be-all, end-all of what your workflow should be. This is some suggestions based on, what I've discovered over the years and what other people have discovered over the years, kind of an amalgamation of all that, right? So best practices, if you will. So like I said, no means am I the expert on workflow and efficiency, but some of the tips and tricks I've given here, I think should be able to help you. So if we think about having a diagnosis or a workflow in general, right? So the workflow from customer input to customer output and delivering the vehicle out. So first thing, of course, we need to do is intake the customer, right? We need to understand what the customer complaint is. Why have they brought the vehicle to me today? And then have it hopefully in a readable, repeatable format where I can have consistency between customers, because we know customers are always very consistent with how they describe their issues with their cars, right? So we want to have some sort of consistency there. Then, of course, we'd want to take the keys and take it on a road test. I want to verify this customer's complaint. If it's a noise, I want to be able to see if I can duplicate the noise, a rattle, a shake, a drivability issue. Any of those things, I want to take it for a quick road test, spin around the block, whatever it happens to be, to duplicate the situation, and then to verify the complaint. Hopefully I have. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Next step is we want to inspect the vehicle, get it into the bay, get it up in the air. A lot of shops, it's just standard operating procedure at this point to do a digital vehicle inspections. There's many ways to do that, or the paper checklist on the clipboard. That's fine too. You just want to be able to uncover the cause of the problem, if possible, or any other issues that may be on the vehicle. Now that I have it up in the air, I see there's also an oil leak, so I'll document that. Or, the tires are really worn on the inside, or the brake pads are almost metal to metal, right? These are the things that you obviously can find doing an inspection portion. Then we're going to want to pre-scan the vehicle, whether it has an engine light or not. I think that's a best practice, just so you can understand what you're dealing with. If everything's green and everything's good, then great. You only wasted, a minute or two to scan through the vehicle and find that there aren't any codes. If there are codes, it might be either related to the problem at hand, or it could be, something we might need to address in addition to. Then we want to get to the diagnosis of whatever it is: noise, rattle, vibration, drivability issue, code, whatever it happens to be. We're going to go through a diagnosis. And of course, that's going to be different depending on what we're trying to diagnose, but just diagnosis is a good lump term for all that stuff. And then, of course, we'll actually repair the problem. And then once the repair is done, sometimes, especially nowadays, we may need to recalibrate something. There might be a reset, a relearn, some sort of calibration needed. So that needs to get done. And then we will clear the codes, road test the vehicle again, make sure everything's gone. Then we'll do a post scan, and then we deliver the vehicle to the customer. Hopefully a happy customer that will return to us in the future, right? So first step, as I said, is we need to define the problem, right? So determine the customer complaint. What kind of problem do I have? Is it a drivability problem? Is it a no start, a noise, drivetrain problem, electrical problem? One good way to do this would be to use a customer interview worksheet. Now, there's many variations of this available out there. This one I got out of ShopKey. So it's got the, customer can fill out their information. Is it a starting problem, engine running problem, poor idling, poor running, automatic transmission, handling, noise, engine temperature, vehicle speed, driving conditions, etc. So, when does it happen? Does it happen first thing in the morning? Does it happen after I've been driving for an hour? You want to know these things so then you can then duplicate whatever that issue happens to be, under those conditions. So if it happens first thing in the morning when it's 30 degrees outside and it's the middle of the day and it's not winter, then you may have a challenge trying to duplicate that, right? So you want to try as best you can to duplicate the problem without having to go, too deep into some other things. So once we understand what the customer's complaint is, then of course we're going to road test the vehicle, drive it on down the road, and see if we can duplicate it. Does it pull to one side? Does it vibrate? Is it a drivability issue? Does it hesitate? Whatever it happens to be, we want to try and duplicate that. Then once the vehicle's warm and all set, we're going to bring it in, we're going to put it on the lift, and we're going to do a vehicle inspection. Now, like I said, many options out there available to do, digital vehicle inspections or paper vehicle inspections or whatever it happens to be. Once again, this one I got out of ShopKey as well. So it's got your, test drive, green, yellow, reds, underhood, suspension, brakes, et cetera. It's kind of all on like 2 pages. And then you can use that to build the ticket if necessary. If there's other things that the customer needs to address that they didn't bring up to you at the intake time, then of course that would be a good time to do that. And you can add, additional labor or additional work, estimates, quotes, et cetera. To it. It happens all the time. You bring your car to a dealership or whatever, they're going to do the same thing, right? It's an industry best practice to inspect that. You want to take it a little step further though, and maybe make it a little easier on yourself for some of these things. Try using thermal imaging, right? Thermal imaging allows you to see heat or temperature differentials, I guess would be the better way to say it, because I'm going to say that on the next slide. But we have developed a thermal imaging inspection checklist. So you can go check things like the undercar, like the tires, brakes, wheel bearings, axle bearings, pinion bearings, exhaust, underhood electrical stuff, cylinders, whether or not we got a misfire, idler pulleys, HVAC, all sorts of different things can be discovered by looking using thermal imaging, right? So it works on a temperature differential, as I said. It's not necessarily this is hot and this is cold. It is what is the range of the temperature on that screen at that time. So in this case, yes, 175 degrees in the middle is quite warm. And then around the outside, though, that I wouldn't call that cold. That's 75 degrees. It is a 100-degree difference. So that's why we're seeing purple versus white. But 75 degrees is not cold by any stretch of the imagination, right? That's t-shirt and shorts weather. I'd love it. Over here, this is the same connector after it was repaired. This is a high resistance in the connector. 83 degrees to 72 degrees, right? So 83 degrees is somewhere probably, I guess, right next to that other thing, right? So 83 degrees there, 72 degrees there. It's a 12-degree difference or 11-degree difference. Not a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. You might not even be able to tell with your hands that there was a difference in the temperature, right? So it's not hot versus cold. It's a difference in temperature between the warmest thing here on the screen versus the coolest thing relative to each other, right? So let's look at some things like tires and bearings, right? So an alignment issue. In this example, more friction on the outside of the tire means I might have a problem with my alignment, right? So it's warmer on the outside than it is on the inside. Versus good, I got a nice even tread all the way across. It's about the same temperature all the way across. I don't necessarily need to worry about excess friction on the outside of the tire, right? Here's another one I think is pretty cool, overinflation, right? So if it's overinflated, the contact patch in the center is going to make more contact than the contact patch on the outside. So you will see warmer temperatures in the middle of the tire. The inverse is true as well. So if I got a low tire, it's going to be warmer on the outside because it's rubbing more on the outside. When it kind of bulges out like that, when the tire is low, it will cause more friction on the outside than on the inside. So you'll be able to see that under an overflated tires. Pinhole leak. This is one of my favorites. I hated using that soapy water bottle underneath the car to try and find those little pinhole leaks. Seem to happen all the time. So in this case, we pressurize the tire under normal tire pressure and then scan it with the thermal and see where's the cold spot, because the air pressure pushing the air out of the tire will cool off that spot. Once again, relative to everything else, but it will cool off a little spot where that higher pressure, higher speed air is going out. It's going to pull some of that out. Here's another one I thought was great. You take it on a road test. You got a noise in the back. Where's the noise in the back? I can check the wheel bearings and I can check the differential. In this case, this is the rear differential. So we got the pinion here and we got the two side bearings there. And lo and behold, high heat or higher heat reveals high friction. Higher friction will generate heat. And then there we go. I got a worn out bearing, right? Now over here, it's still 107 degrees, but that's because of whatever this is over here. I don't know if that's a heater or what's going on in the background. So you kind of, you have to use your observation skills, but you can see after the repair, they wanted to verify it. And indeed, it's not hot anymore. It's very even across the differential there. So once we have the vehicle inspected, maybe we're writing up some additional work. Maybe we have some more to do, right? In this case, we'll do a pre-scan, like I said. So we'll scan the vehicle for codes, check and see. Some modules on a card don't necessarily throw a light. So the customer might not be aware that they have a problem, right? Then in this example, we'll go into our diagnosis phase. Now, in the diagnosis phase, there's going to be certain things that we're going to always want to kind of do, right? So in this example, we'll talk about like a drivability problem, right? So a diagnostic strategy is going to depend on what the problem is. If it is a drivability problem and there's no codes, or even really anytime we want to do a diagnosis on most things, we're going to check bulletins, right? If the manufacturer has found a solution to this problem, a certain percentage of the time, they will release a bulletin, and that'll help you. And that should be the first thing you check after all the observational, let's get the situation figured out, right? Then check the experience-based information as well. What have other technicians done in this scenario? And then if it is a drivability problem, once again, remember your basics of combustion. So fuel, air, spark, compression, or ignition, I guess. Fuel, air, ignition, and compression. So check the fuel trims, check your fuel pump, ignition, mechanical, all the usual suspects that you might suspect with some sort of a drivability issue. Or if it's a code, you want to kind of go through the workflow and figure out, what the problem might be. So like I said, true to pretty much any diagnosis, I want to check TSBs first for could possibly be a solution to this problem. So here's an example on a BMW. It's got a misfire code in this case, engine misfire due to failed ignition coil. And then you'll walk through it and it'll walk you through how to do this repair. And it says the current ISTA misfire test plan for these engines can be lengthy and does not provide an effective method to diagnose a faulty secondary ignition component. So that's wonderful. Sounds like they might need to rewrite that. But what happens is they had a very high failure rate on Bosch coils in these cars. So the TSB basically reads, if it's got a Bosch coil, replace it with a Delphi one. And that's their solution. So, and if you see multiple, just replace them all, even if it's not misfiring, because it's going to fail at some point. So that's their strategy to solve that problem, right? So there's our TSBs. Then we want to go to experience-based information, like I said. Now, if you have a Snap-on tool or access to Snap-on information, you have access to a treasure trove of experience-based information there. So here's an example of multiple fixes, real fixes we call them. It's laid on complaint cause correction format, and it gives you how many times it was a verified fix. So in this case, runs rough, replace ignition coil. We just saw that in the TSB that it's a problem. 7,895 confirmed fixes at the time of the screenshot. I'm sure it's more now. Another thing that you might have seen, especially on our scan tools, is the common repair procedures or commonly replaced parts graph, depending on what you have. Top repairs graph. You may have heard it as well. So this gives you a number of repairs based on mileage. So in this case, at 100,000 miles was the peak, and about 12,000 ignition coils have been replaced over the whole 200,000 mile period, right? So it peaked up here at about, I don't know, a little over 3,000 because we got 2,700 there, 3,700 there. So somewhere around 3,200 probably replaced in that mile range, right? And then also we have this thing called causes and fixes. So what this does is it takes I can run it on a symptom, or I can also run code combinations with this. So in the case of runs rough, could be any of these things, and it ranks them over here. But if it's runs rough while accelerating, it could be these two things, right? Or ignition coil or spark plug and ignition coil. And then it gives you the number of times that happened, right? So I can narrow it down to what the problem might be. All right. If I do have a code, then I'll want to check freeze frame. All right. Freeze frame is a good thing to check pretty much right away. Here's an example that happened to me in the shop back when I was at Subaru. I was an '08 Subaru STI. Customer complained of a stumble under a load and a flashing check engine light. Usually indicates a misfire. No engine light currently, and it did have history codes for multiple misfires. Could not duplicate the concern no matter how much I drove this car. No other issues found. So decided to pull up the freeze frame. And sure enough, there was a freeze frame in there. And the engine speed was 6,200 on a 6,500 RPM redline. 100% throttle, 101 mile an hour vehicle speed. That's why I couldn't duplicate it, because I'm not driving that fast on the highway. I don't need a loss of license just to diagnose a customer's car, right? So you would want to use freeze frame on codes, especially emissions codes. Well, that's really the only time we're going to find them anyways, the emissions codes. And try to duplicate when it happened, right? Some vehicles even provide multiple freeze frame, like Toyotas, for example. So right in the main menu, after codes and everything, we can go to freeze frame. And then you'll see up here, I got this little squiggly line there, and that will bring me to the multiple freeze frames. And that is, it's going to give us 3 data sets before the code stores, a data set when the code is stored, and then a data set after the code is stored. So I can see what happened leading up to it, when it happened, and then did it affect things on the other side. All right, so here's an example. There's -3, -2, -1, when the code's set, and then +1. Now this is on demo data, so it's not necessarily going to be even like real data, right? So it's just kind of dummy data, but it gives you the example of how it would present itself. And then once again, drivability problem, we want to check fuel trims, right? So fuel trim is a window that allows you to see what the computer is doing to control the fuel delivery and determine how the PCM's adaptive strategy is operating. So I want to, we're trying to get to that 14.7. So the oxygen center, the front sensor is going to say, hey, I'm lean. And then in order to fix that lean problem, it's going to say, hey, computer, I need more fuel. So we get a positive fuel trim. Then it will add fuel until it says, hey, now I'm too rich. So then it sends a negative fuel trim to pull that fuel away, and then it goes lean, and then it goes rich, and then it goes lean. It's just a constant loop. When you talk about closed loop operation, this is what it's indicating, right? So it's just going to run in this loop and just adjust constantly as the vehicle is driving. So what the vehicle is reading in the oxygen sensor, like I said, is going to feed that short-term fuel trim. From the short-term fuel trim, is going to feed the long-term fuel trim, and then it's going to adjust there. Now we can use these numbers in both the long-term fuel trim and the short-term fuel trim to see what's going on with the vehicle. So you want to observe if it's plus or minus 5%, either long-term or short-term fuel trim, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, right? It's managing normally expected. Yellow light, you're going to want to kind of worry anywhere you get over 6 up to plus or minus 19, to me seems a little high. By the time I get to double digits, I'm going to be concerned. But that's where it's compensating, and you may not have a light, you may not have a code at that point. But once it gets over 20%, then it realizes that, hey, I got a real problem here, and it's going to throw a light. So more than likely, you're going to get a check engine light. More than likely, you're going to get a code at that point when it's over plus or minus 20%. Because then it's like, whoa, this is something I can't compensate for anymore. Now, in order to have a repeatable workflow, if you have one of our tools with the Fast Track Intelligent Diagnostics function, this will give you a repeatable diagnostic workflow. We actually call it the Fast Track Troubleshooting Workflow. So it's going to give me everything from top to bottom. So if I just go top to bottom on the list, it's going to go through my TSBs. It's going to go through my experience-based information. When I check data, it's going to give me a pre-filtered data list based on what I need to see for that problem, pre-filtered functional tests and reset procedures, pre-filtered guided component test functions, right? So we'll see that when we go live here in the shop in a minute. I'm going to walk you through a whole scenario using most of these workflow items. Once I have diagnosed the problem,
Then, of course, I need to repair said problem. So whatever it happens to be, fix a wiring issue, replace a component, whatever that happens to be, I'm going to go in and I'm going to repair that problem. Then, more than likely, at some point, we are going to have to reset, relearn, recalibrate, whatever, because the majority of items on a vehicle nowadays need some sort of a reset, relearn, calibration. So we're going to clear all the codes, find and perform any resets, relearns, and recalibrations, road test it, set the monitors, and verify the operation of that vehicle before we give it back to the customer. Make sure the concern does not reoccur. Once that is done, we are going to go into a post scan, and we are going to be able to present the customer with a clean bill of health, and they can be on their way with the confidence that you fixed their car right the first time, hopefully, right? All right, so let's go to me in the shop, and we will talk about, going walking through the workflow and how we're going to diagnose this car.
All right, so for our scenario today, we have a 2017 Kia Sedona with a customer complaint as the check engine light is on. Already took it for a road test, seems to be driving okay. It is fully warmed up now, and we just did a pre-scan. So we can see we have the engine, we have one code in there. And then if we scroll down for the OBD2 generic side, we have mode 3, we have the same code. Mode 10 permanent code's the same, pending code's the same. And if we look all the way down the bottom, we have our readiness monitors all set there. So next thing I want to do before I jump into our intelligent diagnostics is I want to pop into the engine real quick and then go into generic functions and then go into freeze frame right here, mode 2. And then we can see the conditions where that code's set. Okay, so there's the one code, 826 RPM, 13% throttle position. Let's see. Fuel system in open loop, 7 seconds since engine start. So it starts pretty much right after the engine started. No fuel trims, vehicle speed of 0, so it's right after startup, not even driving yet. Long-term fuel trims look okay. Voltage is okay. Intake air temperature 37 degrees. Yeah, so the vehicle was cold. So it happened when it first started, so good to know. Just at first startup, maybe the oil pressure wasn't quite there or something like that. We'll figure that out. We'll suss that out as we go through. So we just go back to the code scan. Next thing I want to do is go into our fast track troubleshooting workflow. So we'll hit diagnose, and there's our workflow. So we have the code up there at the top, no TSBs. And then my top repairs graph looks like the oil control solenoids, or the timing control solenoids, and cam and crank sensor are the top 3. So that's a good to know. This has 91,000 miles on it. So that's right around where that's going to start. We say at 100,000 is where it really starts to spike up there. So we'll take that into consideration. Next, let's go into smart data. I have the vehicle fully warmed up at idle, no loads is what we want when we do smart data, so we'll go in there. And what it's doing is it's loading from the various data lists on the vehicle, just pulling back the data we need, filtering out the data we don't need, and it's going to come up here in a second. There we go. All right, so engine oil temperature is a little over. That could be because it's been sitting here idling for a little while. We'll take a look at that. And then we also see the intake cam, bank 1 and 2 actual position versus the desired on the left-hand side. All right, so the desired is 0 degrees, and it's floating a little bit. We're talking tenths of a degree. It's not a lot, but it's enough that it's probably enough to set the code. And if we look down here, knock adaptation is going to be a little bit off because I believe that ties into the actual cam reading. So we'll take that into consideration as well. So it looks like on the intake side is what we're looking for more than on the exhaust side because it's not really flagging anything like that. Even though we do see, if we look down here, there's no flags on it, but we can see that it is moving a little bit, tenths and hundredths in that case. It's not as big of a movement as the intake side, but I think we may be able to see something when we go to our next step, which is going to be all functional tests and reset procedures here first. So we can go in there and see what functional tests are available.
So cam phasers, exhausts, cam phaser intake, exhaust control valve, intake oil control valve, and the TE sealer, which is the after the repair, what we'd want to do. So we said intake, right? So we'll look at intake bank 1. Test to work engine must be running, which it is. Okay, engine running. And continue, and then it's going to come up with our test. Now in this case, it's going to have a lot of stuff we don't necessarily need to see. So that's where the Fast Track Intelligent Diagnostics Smart Data really helps out. But if I look at my actual versus my desired there on my intake cam, and then we hit yes, it's going to advance it. You can see it's 15 degrees there, 16 degrees there. All right. So that's bank 1. So we can see how it advances the timing, right? And we can see they're pretty close. I mean, 16, 15. It's desiring 16. It's hovering. It is moving a decent amount. So I think we might be able to capture that when we go into the, then we'll turn it off there. And then we can see 0 desired on the right. And then on the left, we have our actual over there, right? So I'll exit out of that. I'd imagine we're going to get the same result on bank 2, but we'll take a look. Okay. And then we'll just turn that on. We'll find our data again. I got to scroll down a little bit. There's actual. There's my desired. There we go. So in this case, notice how intake cam bank 2 desired is 16 degrees. Now on the left-hand side, actual, it is barely moving at all. So that kind of tells me that intake cam bank 2, which is what it's flagging, that could be the problem, right? So we'll exit out of that, back up out of that. So that's our functional test, and that seems to verify that there might be a problem with that intake cam valve there. And we'll go to guided component test though, and we'll see what's available there. So we cam crank relationship, cam position sensor, crank position sensor, and then our oil control valves. Right, so I'm thinking that the oil control valve on bank 2 on the intake side might be the problem because, like I said, it's not moving, it's not doing anything. So we will have to take a look at that. So now it's time to go out under the hood and take a look. Okay, so we're under the hood now, and I have my scope module hooked up. We can see that right there. And I also have the my 2 probes that we're going to be connecting. So if I go back over to the screen on the tool, you can see we have cam crank relationship and all those things we talked about earlier. So I want to go to bank 2 intake and take a look. So if we look at component information, it's going to say the solenoid controls camshaft timing by increasing the amount of oil pressure to the camshaft phaser located between the camshaft and camshaft pulley. Increasing the pressure of the phaser can advance the cam slightly. Cam timing is typically slightly retarded at idle for improved emissions and idle quality. During acceleration, the cam is advanced to enhance the efficiency of combustion. And if we look over here on the right-hand side, we got our sub-harness connector and our connector for the actual solenoid. Now, if we look down the bottom, the oil control valve is located in the upper left side of the engine, mounted to the cylinder head, 2 for each bank. So there's one here, and that's the exhaust side. And then there's also one buried down there in the back that you really can't see from here. That's the one in question. Now, so you can't test that directly, so there's actually this sub-harness right here that we can test. So that's what we're going to do. So I'll back up out of that. And before you ask, I'm sure someone's going to ask, did you check the oil? That was the first thing I did when I got under the hood. It is of good quality and good condition, and it is full to the top. So I did that off camera, but it is definitely full and good. So I'm leaning towards the component. So let's do the resistance test. And it says key off, disconnect the sensor connector, connect red and blue test leads across the terminals, and then the resistance should be about 9.4 to 10.4 ohms at 68 degrees. Now, of course, the engine is fully warmed up, so that's a little warmer, so the resistance is probably going to be a little bit different from that. But as long as we're pretty close, we should be in good shape. So let's hit view meter. It's going to open up. Now we want to short the 2 leads together.
in order to calibrate. So you're going to say, yes, I want to calibrate, short the leads together, hit OK. It's going to calibrate it, and we should be good. All right. So let me go the right 2 pins are the one in question. So we'll look at that. And what do we get? Auto scaling down. 12.3 ohms, 12.6 ohms, somewhere in there, roughly 12 to 13 ohms, right? So it's a little higher, but with it warmer, I'll make that, I'll call that okay. And then on the other side, just to verify, we'll double check the other side. That doesn't seem to have the problem. If I can get these pins on there. That's about 12 ohms as well. So the coils within the solenoids appear to be in good shape. Now, whether or not it's getting the signal or not, and how that's affecting other things, we're going to take a look. The next one I want to do is that cam-crank relationship check, just to see, because we can do both the intake and the exhaust cam sensor and the crank sensor on this vehicle. So I'll hook that up, and I'll be with you in a second. Okay, back all connected here. I have channel 1 on the crank sensor, channel 2 on the intake cam sensor, channel 3 on the exhaust cam sensor, and then I also have a channel 4 set up on the number 1 coil in order to get a trigger. So we're going to see where it's set up. We might have to make a few little adjustments here, but we can just see how the relationship kind of works together, right? So cam crank relationship, then we'll do a signature test. Then we can see kind of what it's supposed to look like here on the bottom, and then it gives us reference on the top as to where it needs to go and what channel needs to do what. So we'll hit view meter. Going to make some adjustments, and looks like my crank sensor is a little loose. There we go. All right, so that's kind of how it's set up, and that's kind of how it looks on the screen, but I would like to see more of what's going on, so I need to extend this out a little bit. So even though you're in guided component test, you can go in and you can make these adjustments at will. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to open that up, make it a little bigger. Come down here on the right, open up, add my second channel for 1. And then I'm going to go from 20 milliseconds where it's preset, which is fine enough. But if I go to 100 milliseconds, now we can see we got a lot more going on the screen there, and a little loose on the intake cam as well. Just get that. Sometimes it's tough to get those back probes to stay. We're trying to. There we go, that looks good. All right, so now I have my crank sensors yellow, green is the intake cam, and blue is the exhaust cam. And now I want to add a channel 4. Like I said, I put that on the number 1, or the front of the bank, number 2 cylinder coil. So now if I set that as my trigger, every time number 1 or number 2 fires, it holds everything kind of in time there, as you can see, right? And of course, my exhaust is being a little touchy as well. But we can see how they are in time, and there is a spec on Kia's and Kia's service information. There's a spec of what that's supposed to look like, so we'll be able to kind of compare and contrast with that. Okay, so now I want to exit. I want to see a little bit more on this. So I'm going to exit out of this and back out a little bit till I can get to my intelligent diagnostics again. Then I'm going to go and open up the guided component test meter by itself, which I already have open to the cam crank relationship test again. Just going to hit view meter. Just do a couple things to get this set up real quick. Back to the way I had it on the other screen. And I want to be able to do, there we go, got it set up. I want to be able to do that functional test again, right, where I'm commanding and seeing how it goes. So I'm going to open that up in a window. Come back over here to my scanner. It's going to go to my intelligent diagnostics. Now I'll go to functional tests and resets. And then I'm on bank 2, right? So we have exhaust and we have intake. Intake's the one we think we have a problem with. So we'll go to cam phaser intake bank 2. Going to go back through this functional test.
and it will open up. There we go. I want to get to where I can see my, actually let's just do a custom data list on this. That'll make it even easier. So deselect all, and then I want to see the intake cam, bank 2 desired, intake bank 2 actual. Right? So we'll go back to the lists. There's your desired and your actual, and you can see how it's a little bit different, a little off. It's what it was doing before, right, when we looked at the smart data. So now I want to go and pull up my scope and see how this affects it. So I'm going to put that there, I'm going to put that there. So I got my scope on the right side, and I got my functional test on the left-hand side. So if I turn on the functional test, my desired on the left-hand PID is going to go up to 16, and now we see it's not working again. So when I tested this earlier, it was doing what I needed it to do, and you could actually watch the result on the scope, right? So in this case, it is not responding. So it is intermittent how this is operating, right? And you can see the result on the right-hand side. It is not moving. That green line should be moving to the left for advancing, right? So in this case, it is not moving. It was moving earlier, like I said, in setup, so we can't see that. But to show you kind of what it would look like, we'll go to the exhaust one, because we know that seems to be working. Go back to that functional tests. And we'll go back to custom again. Deselect, we'll find our exhaust cam, bank 2 is what we want. Bank 2 desired, bank 2 actual. Go back to the list. So we can see we're roughly equal again. We'll go to yes to turn it on. And then we can see that blue line just moved to the right for retarding, right? So the intake will advance and the exhaust will retard. So we see it went to the right, I hit no, comes back to the left, goes back to where it was. Hit yes again, it's gonna shoot over to the right because it's retarding the timing, and then back to no, right? So we should be able to see that on the other phaser. Since we're commanding that phaser, and since it's not doing what we need it to do, that's why I said I would recommend that we are going to recommend replacing that cam phaser on this vehicle. Just going to try it one more time just to see, and we'll just watch the scope right. Yes, doesn't move. No, doesn't move. So the signal is being sent. The valve is just not moving. So like I said, we'll recommend an oil control valve. Then once we're done with that, there is a relearn that needs to be done after that. Then we would, of course, clear the codes, road test the vehicle, make sure no codes come back, go to the post scan. Since the repair actually needs to be done, we can't go any further in this video, but that's what I would be recommending based on these tests.
All right, wonderful. So that was a great little case study there. As I said, didn't have necessarily the time when the filming schedule in order to actually go through the whole repair. I'm hoping to complete that and kind of, complete that loop, as we say, in the future, hopefully within the next couple of months, and you might see that as a standalone video. But as of right now, this is where we leave it and following through that workflow, right? So that is workflow.
And with that, that's our time here today. So make sure you tune in for new diagnostic content every week. We'll be premiering a new video every Wednesday at 7 p.m. UK time, so make sure to check it out here on our YouTube channel. Please make sure you also subscribe, thumbs up, and ring that little notification bell so you'll know anytime we post new content. With that, time for questions. Now, if you have any questions, once again, if you're watching this on the premiere, just leave it in the live chat and we'll do our best to answer those. Otherwise, leave a comment under the video and we'll get to those as we monitor those comments as well. So I'd like to thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day to learning a little bit more about how you might be able to be more efficient at diagnosing vehicles using some of the information that we've been giving you today. Hopefully we'll see you next week, and we'll see you on any of our other videos. Have a good week, have a good night, and take care.